590 AM. This morning, we will be focusing on domestic violence throughout the whole month, but we will be talking to Judge Friesen today, as well as Regine and Carmelle from AFAB. Judge Friesen is a judge from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and she will be talking to us about the trainings that she had for domestic violence, and what are some of the things that she looks into when someone comes in and petitions for a restraining order or a harassment order, and what are the things that are important for people to know within the criminal justice systems out there, so that we can get the help that we need, so women can come forward freely to talk about their issues and problems that they're having with a partner. And also we will get some resources from Association of Haitian Women, as well, as far as what resources they usually provide to women that are suffering domestic violence in the hands of their husband or their partners. And today we will be opening up the lines for anyone who has questions about domestic violence. If you are a survivor, we would like to know how you overcame your domestic violence, what resources were available to you, and what you wished that you had as a resources that you did not have at the time. The lines will be open again. Our number is 617-328-7514. Again, the phone number to WEZE 590 for Voice of Reason Boston is 617-328-7514. Good morning, ladies. How are you this morning?
Good morning.
And if you can introduce yourself to people who are listening in to us in the radio station, as well as people who are watching us on Facebook Live. And if you're interested to go on Facebook, you can see us live on Voice of Reason Boston on Facebook. Carmelle, if you can introduce yourself for us and tell us what you do at Haitian Association of Women and what your role and title is.
My name is Carmelle Bonomet. I'm the Domestic Violence Program Director. I have been there for like 20 years, but 15 years as a Domestic Violence Program Director.
Hi everyone, my name is Regine Albin, and I am a domestic violence advocate at the Association of Haitian Women in Boston, and I've been working since April. I'm there to provide direct services to victims of domestic violence.
Good morning, I'm Shannon. I'm a Justice of the Superior Court in Massachusetts. This is my 9th year as a judge. I was also on the Boston Municipal Court before that, and I am from Chicago, but I've been here in Boston for quite a while.
And I would like to thank you ladies for coming out and, just trying to educate the public and the community about this domestic violence issue that is going on. And we know that we're in a country where women are not being respected, whether you're high, low, or middle class. And it's important for us to share this message. I thank you for coming on to Voice of Reason Boston so we can talk about these issues. Carmelle, we can start off with you, as well as Regine. Let's rephrase it. What is domestic violence? One of you can answer, whichever one wants to answer.
Domestic violence is when you got a relationship, one of the partner is using his power and his control over the other partner. Okay. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be mental, it could be financial. And also, as immigrants, we know how they can use that green card over our head because of domestic violence. So it can take and domestic violence doesn't have any boundaries, and it doesn't matter or well-to-do that you are economically, academically, it doesn't matter. Even also as the perpetrator, there is no sign on the perpetrator face when you see somebody on the street that says, oh, so-and-so is a perpetrator. It could be a police officer, it could be a teacher, it could be a judge, it could be even an advocate, he could be a lawyer, and there is no sign in the person's head that will tell you so-and-so is an abuser and so-and-so is a victim. So, and domestic violence is a global issue. It's not only, and now as a group of immigrants, it's not only for immigrant who are victim or of domestic violence. It's a global issue. But the problem is, each countries, each ethnic group is dealing with it.
And I'm going to redirect the question to Regine. As an advocate, you also work at the Dorchester District Court. What are some of the things that you see that victims come in for, and how do you provide all the resources that is available to you to make sure that that person has access to it as well?
I think when the victims come to the court, it can be an intimidating place to come in, because especially like since the court, there's a judge there, there's a lot of legal aspect to it. Many of the victims, they come in, they might not necessarily know how the system works. So I'm there to provide support for them and to help them navigate the system and to tell them specifically how it works. And for immigrants, mainly Haitians that I work with, they might not necessarily know, they don't know the system, and also the language. There's a language barrier. So I'm there for them just to explain to them what is going on in their own language. So I think by being there for them and being there as a support to them, it really helps them and also takes the pressure off of them, because when they come into the court, it's a huge step to come in to get a restraining order. So by having someone there that can explain to them how the system works, like it takes the pressure off of them.
And I know you speak another language, you speak Haitian Creole. What is the number one thing in the Haitian community, especially for women who are seeking a restraining order? What do you find most difficult for them to understand? I know they need the support, but not understanding the way the system works, not understanding some of the languages, how do you usually break it down to them so that they can really understand what was in Haiti is not like what's in the U.S.?
So I think when they come in, they might be scared. They don't know if they'll be protected, because mostly in Haiti, they might there's no rules or laws there to protect them. So just telling them that this is like, if you get a restraining order, you can get it so you can be protected for a year. So the perpetrator can't contact you or come and visit you, knowing that if they break the law, there will be consequences. So just being there for them and telling them exactly what will happen if the perpetrator does not respect the law. I think that's very reassuring to them.
And also what I can say is, being an advocate myself in the past, when you used to send clients for me, Carmelle, how important for people to know that some women who are abused, they come into the court and they don't go along with the restraining order after giving them detail by detail of what a restraining order is about. And also, they're afraid if they have no one in the country, where they're going to stay. They have nowhere to go, they have no one to stay with, and it leaves them with no option to only accept what the information that we're giving them. But there's an other side where they don't want to accept it either. And I would say there's a lot of women that I've encountered when they get a restraining order, when you reach half of the application with them, they change their mind because they're afraid they don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's a very complex situation for an immigrant, and dealing with the criminal justice system over here, because not only they have to worry about what's going on here, they have to worry about what's going back home.
Right.
Because there is retaliation, because they don't know what's going to happen with the family that they left here. And we had so many of them at AFAB. They will be coming. They left their mother, they left their kids, where the perpetrator will send people in Haiti to harm them. So sometimes that's one of the reasons people cannot understand when they go to court and they say, okay, I got the restraining order, but I want to vacate it. They are afraid. They are more afraid now with the restraining order than before. So sometimes we have to understand and meet them where they're at in order to understand what's going on, why do they refuse the restraining order. It's not because they don't want to protect themselves. Most of the time they are thinking about people back home. And we have seen it so many times where there is retaliation back home with the family members.
Yeah, and that would fall under the using intimidation, making her afraid by using looks, action, gestures, destroying her property, abusing, anything that they can manipulate the person to make them feel crazy to the point where the person doesn't want to go through with it anymore. And Judge Freisen, I'm going to refer to you as a judge and through your training. What do you see when people come into court petitioning for a restraining order, and you have to listen to all the cases, all the facts and allegation that is put towards someone who's requesting a restraining order? How do you go about, determining if this person is going to get a restraining order or they need more to get a restraining order, like more information in the affidavit?
Sure. We are always interacting with the person who's asking for a restraining order,
Right.
normally in person. If something happens overnight when court is closed, we do have a mechanism to deal with restraining orders overnight as well. Judges are on duty overnight. But in general, you're in person and you're speaking directly to the person requesting restraining order. Because of that, I am able to get pretty much all the information I want. I can ask as many questions as I want and inquire into areas that will give me enough information to let me know if this person is actually afraid of the individual they're seeking it against and whether or not something has already occurred. So because the person is there in person, I'm usually able to get a lot of information about the situation, at least from their perspective. And one of the main issues is whether or not the person is in fear of the other person.
And a restraining order is someone who can request it if they are in a romantic relationship, or if they're in a relationship with someone, if the person lives with someone like a roommate. Can you break it down to us? Who can get a restraining order?
Sure, it's a little bit more confusing these days because of the enactment also of 258E, Mass General Laws 258E, which is the harassment protection orders. And so that was enacted more recently to cover folks who are not necessarily in a romantic relationship. Sometimes there may be someone trying to make a romantic relationship that ends up committing acts that lead toward harassment, as we call it. And sometimes there are other situations like neighbors and people who are just not involved and are not family members that statute covers. And it's a little different. You can get an order protecting you from harassment, but you do need to have at least 3 incidents of harassment. So it's a little different standard. The restraining orders, and that was one thing I wanted to mention as we're talking about it, we are talking about it in terms of men being perpetrators or abusers and women being the victims and folks coming in for orders. That is the majority of the situation. However, that's not all that restraining orders cover.
Correct.
They also cover same-sex relationships. It may be a woman getting a restraining order against another woman that she's involved with. It may be a man getting a restraining order against another man that he's involved with in an intimate relationship. It also covers people you live with that you're not romantically involved with. So you may have a roommate because you're in college, but because you live with that person, you're also covered by 209A. The differences in the statutes are really about the relationships of the parties, but the protection is virtually the same. No contact with the person, no abuse or no harassment, and to stay away from a particular person or persons.
And
The orders can also include other things if they are relevant to the situation. So the judge can always add things like no communication on Facebook, no indirect communication through other people that the abuser may send to speak to you or have email you. We can have keys returned. We can
Right.
make you leave a residence. So it's pretty broad and at the discretion of the judge exactly what is ordered.
Right. And also, it's important to let people know that when they petition for a restraining order, unless there's a criminal case along with that, the day that you are requesting for the restraining order, the judge can put it on, can extend the restraining order to a year or up to 2 years, I believe. But usually the process is when you come into the court and request for a restraining order, you have to come back in 10 days so that both parties can be heard on the reason why you want the restraining order. Why is it important that they must come back in 10 days?
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned that. There are several steps in the process, and getting an initial, what we call ex parte restraining order, where there's just one party, the requesting member, present and giving information to the judge, we make that what we call a temporary order. And we do that because essentially we have not heard from the person that is accused of the conduct. And so for the immediate protection of the person that I deem in fear of another, I can issue this temporary order. As you stated, it's 10 days, and the person requesting it and issued on behalf of that person needs to return to court, and on that date, the person who it is issued against may be present. So your partner or the other person may be present in the courtroom. And that's why security is so important at the courthouse, and people need to understand that we take great measures to keep people separate, to make sure that court officers escort you in and out if need be, and anything else that's required. But hearing from both people will then allow the judge to determine whether or not it's extended, because it's extended for a long period of time. It can be extended for up to a year. It can be extended after that beyond a year. I have issued indefinite or permanent, as we call them, restraining orders when it's necessary. And those are usually more serious allegations. Some may have ended up in criminal charges, even conviction and prison time. And in certain situations, that protection can be for the lives of the parties. So it really depends, and they can always be different. The restraining order itself, as I think you mentioned, is civil. Right. However, when one is issued, it shows up on your criminal record.
It does.
And also, police can basically see that information from their mobile data terminals in their cruisers. So, this is something that is essentially put out into the system about a person, even though it's civil in nature. And a violation of it then will cause a criminal complaint to issue.
Thank you. And again, the lines are open. Call in if you have any questions. Our number is 617-328-7514, 617-328-7514. And Carmelle, I know you had something to add on to that. What were you going to say?
No, because oftentimes we are dealing with some of the perpetrators. They are really knowledgeable of the criminal justice system. We will end up with victim, end up being a defendant at the courthouse. Sometimes it's really hard to put those victims at the real place. And as a judge, I just want to know how you deal with that. If there's a mechanism in place to figure out when one is lying. It could be the woman, it could be the man, it could be any of the partner.
You mean the credibility?
Yeah.
That is case by case. It's not unlike any other case in court in which people are giving contradictory testimony. That's essentially what we're talking about. Someone saying, this happened to me, and someone else saying, no, it didn't.
Do you have a question?
And in those situations, I am using my own judgment to determine which person is telling the truth.
All right, no problem.
But I don't have a lot to go on other than the parties presented before me, what they're saying, whether or not it seems accurate, whether or not it is consistent with any police report that may have been written about it, and whether or not the person's fear and complaint seems genuine. And so it's not a conviction, so I'm not deciding anything beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm deciding whether this person has a reasonable fear of another person. So it's really just a
Hello?
credibility determination once I hear
Yeah,
from
so I'll need your name and where you're from.
And I think you make that was a valid question,
Okay, give me a
because
second.
a lot of people need to know when requesting for a restraining order. The restraining order is something serious, and if you need it because you are being harmed, someone is forcing you to do something against your will, and you need the restraining order, you get the restraining order. However, there are some times where people come and request for the restraining order because they don't want the person to come to the house anymore, or they request
Okay.
a
Are you
restraining
ready?
order because their significant
Okay.
or significant other or partner
Alright,
has
Just be waiting on the line.
say a
until
new
they,
girlfriend
start
or a
talking to
new
you.
boyfriend. So I think it's very important for people to know that the restraining order, the trial courts take it really serious, and that when someone is requesting a restraining order, it goes on that person's record. So it is very important for when you're coming to get a restraining order that you understand what the process is, and always get an advocate, because the district attorney's office have a lot of good advocates that speak multilingual. Some of them are Spanish, Haitian, and Vietnamese. If you are coming from another country, or if you don't speak English, definitely always seek an advocate to help you and break it down to you what the process is. As an advocate, did you want to add a little to when someone's petitioning for a restraining order and they say that they want the restraining order for this? Do you have to explain to them that you can't get it for that, but if you have one of the options on the application, you certainly can get the restraining order?
Yes, so I think when the victims come in and when whatever they need the restraining order for, I try to tell them exactly why it's there, and explain to them the process of you can ask for a restraining order from the judge, and they'll ask you questions about specifically what happened, and you just have to make sure you answer what
Correctly, yes.
answer correctly, and whatever you write on your affidavit, the judge will see it and ask you questions about that, and that the judge will decide if they'll grant you the restraining order, and then after 10 days you have to come back in front of the judge with the abuser, and then the judge will ask you, usually for 6 months or for a year, how long you want the restraining order to be there for. So just making sure I tell them they have to be ready for the question. They don't have to feel pressured like when the judge asks them that many questions.
Just preparing them.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a caller. And what is your name and town you're calling from? I'm sorry, we can you say that again? Your name?
I'm from Milton.
You're from Milton, and what is your name? Just your first name.
Ghislaine.
Ghislaine, thank you for calling on Voice of Reason Boston. So what is your question when it comes to domestic violence?
Okay, I have a question, but I need to make a statement related to the question.
Okay.
On the list of, I am a social worker. I used to work at DCS.
Okay.
Now, the problem is that we seem to omit the right of children to file for domestic violence in their communities when they are actually in homes where they are mistreated.
Right.
People abuse of children is rampant in our community. And I wanted to know at what age can, and I suppose it is when they become 18 or 18 or 21, whatever. So if they are still living at home and their parents continue to beat on them, do they have the right to file for domestic violence protection?
Good question. If I understand you correctly, you want to know when a child has been seeing domestic violence in the home?
No, being abused themselves.
Being abused themselves. When can they request for a restraining order?
Yeah. Oh, well, there's the schools, the hospitals, and community people can file a 51A. But if the children are being silenced and threatened to be deported, like when they are teenagers,
Oh, okay.
can they actually fight for their own protection?
I know that legal age is 18. So
Okay.
if a child or a teenager if a child is being abused, the school, the nurse, or someone who sees this incident can help the child or come on behalf of the child to request a restraining order. I know DCF gets involved and they have their own process, but I know once the child is 18, they can come into court and request a restraining order.
Okay.
And in general, when there's a child involved, it's treated a little differently if the parent is being abused and files for a restraining order. Many times that person will include the children, and the judge will include the children on the order for the person to stay away from and have no contact with.
Yeah,
So,
I have had families relocated because of that. But my concern is that despite the fact that DCF exists and 51s can be filed, a lot of the domestic violence starts in the home. And I wish there were more effective parenting, nurturing effective parenting programs in our communities to help them understand, starting in the 30s.
Yes, I agree with you too. There should be more programs where parents are being educated on how to raise children. Not only that, but to help them understand different mechanisms on how to communicate in order to instead of using like abuse emotionally, physically, or mentally. I think it's very important that parents are always going into some type of programming or classes on how to teach children how to do things differently instead of reacting physically or mentally or emotionally. And that is something that is very prominent in the Haitian community. My parents, they did not spare the rod, I can say. So I try to not raise my child the way my parents raised me, and they did a wonderful job raising me, but it's just kids now these days are growing up differently. They're receiving information differently. So there's certain things that you cannot do that you were brought up doing. Carmelle, I don't know if you have any questions in regards to that when it comes to domestic violence. But what people don't know is that the child grows up with some aggression and some type of frustration that they end up using on other people. And it causes like a domino effect, and then you have this whole big problem that you can't solve.
And before I have to leave, so I'm going to make another statement.
Okay.
I have another question.
Okay.
Can the government incorporate this kind of preparation, parenting requirement for people who are new immigrants to learn how to treat children? I know that even in America, a lot of families, Caucasian families are all their kids are extremely abused, and the world doesn't know because they are Caucasian and nobody reports them. But in our communities, our people in Haiti, I'm from Haiti, so they come from a country where there is much as far as child protection goes. There is a law, but nobody seems to be caring about that. So a lot of young people come and then they engage in a relationship with my young clients, and then they would be physically abusive of them as well. So I am glad that you have a program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support.
To support you, okay?
Thank you so much. And that's a great statement, because I was speaking to someone about that. I was saying that I think we should have some type of training or class for people who are coming from different countries on how to help them understand what the system is all about and what things are different in this country versus their own country. Because domestic violence in Haiti or any other country is normal, and women are not reporting it. And I think that would be a good step for the government to look into, to have some type of training class for newly immigrants that are coming into this country, and just to go over things of how things in different states work. I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything about that.
But at AFAB, we do have a support group called New Immigrant Support Group. That's exactly what we talk about. We talk about every subject that we know new immigrant will need to
Right.
function in this country. But most of the time, we make it mandatory for people who are in our program. But when we do those kind of training for the larger community, they barely showed up.
They barely show up, yeah. Lack of
Because
support.
we did have a forum like 3 days ago
Yes.
on domestic violence. And I can say that I was surprised for a Wednesday. We got a good group of
It was a
people.
good-
It
good
was a
round
good
of people,
attendance.
yes.
But it could have been more. It should have been more.
Mm-hmm.
Because the subject that we were talking about was so relevant to what's going on in their life.
Right.
They should have been there. But at least we are grateful for the number of people that we got in attendance that day for a Wednesday. But those kind of training, they do exist in the community, but sometimes we do it and the people, they just don't show up.
Yeah, I think that we should have more community outreach and more people, looking to have these kind of support groups, because it's very important. I remember I had a case where I was dealing with a woman who requested a restraining order. She came in for the restraining order, and for the restraining order, and we looked in the past that she has, but she never fell through with it. So this time she finally went with the restraining order. She was going through some hardships with her spouse, where her spouse was just abusing her, and she had 2 children. And she came in, she went through the whole process, and then she was from a Muslim background, I'm not really sure where she came from, but usually, they have elders that they have meetings with to talk about it instead of going to the court process. And she went through with it. She went in front of the judge, and the defendant was there because there was a criminal case attached with it. And then we broke for lunch. And then I spoke to her. I said, anything you need, I can go to lunch with you if you want to talk more. And she said, no, I'm going to go home and check on my kids, and then I'm going to come back. And then 2 o'clock went by, 3 o'clock went by. I called her. No, she did not answer. We called the police to do a wellness check, and then this woman took her life. And that devastated me that day. I cried about it because I felt that as an advocate, was there more that I can do for this woman? Now she has 2 children that are without a mom. But I say this to say that domestic violence is real, and there's people out there that need support that don't have it, because they're so saturated in their culture, and their culture finds other ways of solving the issue, and the man just keeps on doing it over and over and over again, and until the woman becomes crazy or takes their own life. That was an unfortunate situation for this woman, but that day I vowed to always give extra time to people who are facing domestic violence, because it's a serious issue. And we're in a country where we see people that are in high position that are disrespecting women and getting away with it. And if we have the opportunity to speak about it, and if we have the opportunity to share resources and support people with domestic violence, it's always important to continue and to lay a hand out to them. Again, our lines are open, 617-328-7514. did any one of you ladies have an experience where a woman or either a man was facing domestic violence and just found no way out to get help? Because sometimes when you go to the criminal justice process, the process is so long, you just don't want to go through it.
Oh, that's happened. I just want to go back to what you were saying earlier. And working with immigrants, I remember back in the 90s at Dutchess Circuit, we used to have a comprehensive domestic violence program there. You got services for the defendant, you got service for the victim, and you have so many different advocates. We used to have so many different advocates at Dutchess Circuit. We used to have a Vietnamese, a Haitian, somebody that speaks Spanish, a Portuguese. There was a Portuguese one, there was a Spanish one, there was a Cape Verdean. There were probably like 10 different ethnic groups at Dutchess Circuit at one point. They were working 5 days a week. But now, we got only one Haitian advocate a week working at Dutchess Circuit. One day a week cannot really serve the whole community of Haitian in Dorchester dealing with domestic violence at Dutchess Circuit. The Portuguese population, they got 1 day a week as well because of funding cut. So, for somebody who come to a country where there is no such thing as restraining order, it doesn't take, you cannot take 5-10 minutes to explain to the person what a restraining order is all about. I have women coming to my office crying because they just got a restraining order and now they just realize that the husband is not coming home tonight.
Right.
That's what they got in mind when they went to court. So that need more than 5-10 minutes to explain to the victim, you are going to have a restraining order and this is what is entailed.
And I also think it's important for anyone who's seeking a restraining order, even if you get a restraining order and you seek counseling with your partner or whomever it is, and you work it out, it's always okay to go back.
If you want to, yeah.
If you want to, and you're not pressured or no one's telling you to do it, no one's forcing you to do it, you always can come back and remove the restraining order. And if you want to remove the restraining order, the judge will ask you series of questions, but you also can keep the no abuse part. But you can always keep the restraining order, but in the restraining order, the person can always come back home, but they cannot abuse you emotionally, physically, and mentally. Judge Freisen, I don't know if you want to say something about that.
It is. It's a very flexible system, especially for a victim. As you stated, there's nothing that prevents you from coming back in and asking that the order be modified in ways if you need more or less protection via the order. You can also ask that it be vacated and ended altogether. And one important thing to remember about domestic violence, and the reason that we talk about these difficulties is because it's a cycle.
Right.
It's a cycle for the abuser and it's a cycle for the victim. So it's not unlike substance abuse,
Right.
in which falling off and going back to a substance is a part of the recovery and should be expected. So it's not always, okay, you're on this particular substance, go this program, you're done, you're complete, and you're clean now for the rest of your life.
Right.
There's often a back and forth until the person is completely on the straight and narrow. The same thing happens in domestic violence, and as judges, we actually train ourselves and the staff, all of the probation officers,
Right.
advocates, court officers, everyone within the trial court is now trained on
That's
domestic
true.
violence.
Yes.
And part of that training is getting folks to understand that it's a cycle and not to exhibit or have your own feelings as a member of the court about someone who recants a story and events that they've already told,
Right.
or goes back to someone that they said is abusing them, or comes in several times for restraining orders, vacates them or has them vacated, come back in. That's all a part of it, and part of our job is to not take it personally, but understand that that's part of the cycle,
Right.
and try to still push both people through that part of the cycle to a better plane of interacting, or perhaps not interacting at all.
Right. And I think counseling is very important for people to seek. Oftentimes, we wonder how people start off being abusive to someone. I think it starts from childhood. It's like a domino effect. A child, sees what goes on in the home. The child may have someone they really loved walked away from them, or the father or their mother is no longer in their lives. That's all an aggression towards domestic violence. Some people can deal with it in a way where they just close up and they don't do anything, or some people, they just do certain things and take action or abuse someone else because that was done to them. So I think it's very important that it starts from at home. It starts at a young age on what abuse is all about. And I know there's some schools now that are starting to help students release their frustration in different ways. They have like emotional curriculums. They have nurses and psychologists or counselors that are available in schools now, because I believe training these young people that are growing up in our next generation, it's important for them to understand that just because you're upset, that doesn't mean you can hit me. Just because you're upset, that doesn't mean you can say something to me to hurt my feelings. So I think it's very important that, we start showing love or being more conscious of what we do in front of young children, because it starts from at a young age. Okay? I'm not sure if we have any more callers coming in. We thank you all for coming in, for talking about domestic violence. We could spend the whole day talking about domestic violence. I believe domestic violence is silent. It has no class. It has no race. It has no economic system. Domestic violence can come from all walks of life. Again, Voice of Reason Boston will be focusing on domestic violence the whole month. Next week, we'll be having the Boston Legal Service come in to talk about TPS, domestic violence, and how they help people in the community who are facing domestic violence issues. And Association of Haitian Women in Boston will be having a gala Saturday, October 20th, 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. And it's going to be located in 61 Rockwood Street, Jamaica Plain, Mass. And the guest speaker will be the first African-American mayor in from Framingham, Dr. Yvonne Spicer. She will be the guest speaker. If you're interested, definitely purchase your ticket. I will post it on my Facebook page. I thank everyone for tuning in. Next week, the lines will be open as well. Share your thoughts. We want to know how you overcame domestic violence, what resources were available to you, and what would you like to see more in the community supporting domestic violence victims and all people who are facing all types of abuse. Again, this is Voice of Reason Boston. You can check us out at Facebook, Voice of Reason Boston. You can check us out on Instagram, Voice of Reason Boston. And you can email me with any questions at voiceofreasonboston@gmail.com.